Let's turn from there to my other big story today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lashed out at the opposition and at human rights activists today, accusing them of selective outrage on human rights. Remember, the Prime Minister's remarks came at a National Human Rights Commission function, but come against the backdrop of what's been happening in Lakhimpur Kheri. The Prime Minister claims that this is a dangerous trend for the country to have selective outrage. The opposition says the Prime Minister first needs to set his house in order. Take a look.
मानव अधिकार की व्याख्या कुछ लोग अपने अपने तरीके से अपने अपने हितों को देखकर करने लगे हैं। एक ही प्रकार की किसी घटना में कुछ लोगों को मानव अधिकार का हनन दिखता है और वैसी ही किसी दूसरी घटना में इन्हीं लोगों को मानव अधिकार का हनन नहीं दिखता है। इस तरह का सिलेक्टिव व्यवहार लोकतंत्र के लिए भी उतना ही नुकसानदायक है।
The Prime Minister speaking on the foundation day of the National Human Rights Commission, igniting a massive political storm, raising the question of selective outrage. While he did not name any political party, the BJP tore into the Gandhis.
प्रियंका जी, क्या ये सत्य नहीं है कि राजस्थान के प्रेमपुरा गांव, जो राजस्थान के हनुमानगढ़ के जिले में है, इस गांव में, प्रेमपुरा गांव में आज से चंद दिनों पहले जगदीश मेघवाल नामक एक युवा को जिस प्रकार से पीट पीट के बेरहमी से मार दिया गया, उसे मौत के घाट उतार दिया गया।
प्रधानमंत्री ने ये छोटी बात की, बड़ी बात नहीं है। ये छोटी क्यों है? यह प्रधानमंत्री पहलू खान, अखलाक खान, हाथरस, उन्नाव, कठुआ के वक्त चुप बैठे रहे थे। हम भी आरोप लगाते हैं प्रधानमंत्री पे कि बड़े सिलेक्टिवली बोलते हैं।
Prime Minister Modi's comments come amidst outrage over the killing of 4 farmers in UP's Lakhimpur Kheri and claims that the accused, a union minister's son, was being protected. The Prime Minister's comments were echoed by Justice Arun Mishra, chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. He said there is a new tendency to accuse India of human rights violations at the behest of international forces.
बाहरी ताकतों द्वारा भारत पर मानव अधिकारों के हनन का छद्म आरोप लगाना सामान्य बात हो गई है। इसके प्रतिकार के साथ ही संस्कृति तथा प्रचलित भाषाओं को समूल नष्ट करने के प्रयासों का पुरजोर प्रतिरोध भी आवश्यक है।
In August, Supreme Court Chief Justice N.V. Ramanna underlined the sacrosanct nature of human rights, saying if India was to remain a society governed by law, it was necessary to ensure that even the most vulnerable enjoyed its full protection. The big human rights question has loomed large over the government, with it being criticized by a section over the current handling of the farm crisis. And now, with the Prime Minister's comments, an all-out political blowout over the issue is expected, with a backdrop of the election-bound state of Uttar Pradesh. Bureau Report, India Today.
The Prime Minister's comments on selective outrage by human rights activists, is it justified or unwarranted? Is it true that politics colors responses to rights issues? Is the BJP being singled out over rights violations, or should the BJP or the ruling party be getting its act together? Or is the opposition responsible? Rakesh Sinha, BJP MP, Kavita Krishnan, rights activist, also a CPIML Politburo member, joins us. Appreciate both of you joining us. Kavita Krishnan, to you first. How do you respond to the Prime Minister's basic charge of selective outrage? It seems to stem, as the BJP subsequently suggests, that when there is an attack that takes place, let's say against a Dalit in Rajasthan, which is Congress ruled, activists don't make it a big issue, but when it happens in a BJP state, it becomes a political issue. How do you respond to this line that has been pushed by the Prime Minister today?
See, I think it's very telling that the Prime Minister used a human rights platform today to attack human rights activists. I think that is what he's telling the world. And the selective outrage business, you see, whataboutery doesn't work on activists, because activists are interested in the act. They are not interested in the identity of who has, who is getting political credit or not from it. So the Dalit activists, the Dalit people being attacked in Rajasthan, or Muslims being attacked in Rajasthan, of course, who has intervened in those incidents if it is not the usual suspects, which is the human rights activists that we all know? If it is Kashmir also, that is the same thing. See, my point is Narendra Modi is the one who is selective. In 2014, when Kashmiri Pandits were attacked, he blamed the Abdullahs who were in government. Now, who is there to blame except his own people, he himself, who is running Jammu and Kashmir, right? He is running the Valley Run now. So why is it that he doesn't want to listen to any criticism of his functioning on this count? The point, I think, to remember is that human rights is defined, if you look at the UN definition of human rights, it is the state, the government, that is supposed to, that there are certain things they must not do. That means they should not violate these rights. So there are certain restrictions on the state's actions. There are certain things they must do to protect rights. And there are certain things they must positively do as policies to guarantee certain rights like education, food, and so on. Now, when it comes to whataboutery and selective outrage, it is actually Narendra Modi and his party. See, they will always talk about 1984, but they will never talk about 2002. Whereas if you ask the activists, PUDR and PUCL were the first to bring out the reports, the human rights groups, were the first to bring out the report on who is the guilty on 1984. They are the ones, and likewise all of us, who are equally vocal on 2002. We are the ones who speak out when land is grabbed, whether it is in Dadri, whether it is in Kalinganagar, whether it is in Gujarat, whether it is in Nandigram. So, what
so
about it doesn't work?
You're interestingly saying that maybe in your view the Prime Minister is failing to recognize that human rights activists may not see a crime against an individual through a political prism, but opposition parties may. And maybe that's the distinction the Prime Minister is drawing. He seems to suggest that opposition parties, if it's a Congress-ruled state, will a Congress politician speak out again for a Dalit who has been attacked in Rajasthan? That's the point he's making.
I'm saying that the Prime Minister himself is guilty of what he is accusing us of doing.
Okay.
I do not think he is accusing only political persons, otherwise he would have said so. He is a man who is good with words. He is attacking human rights activists. He has locked us up, He has locked up so many of us. So many of my friends are in prison today. Okay, so let us be real. Let's call a spade and let's not say stuff to protect this guy. He is the one. Narendra Modi is the one who is guilty of the selective stuff that he is accusing us of.
Let Rakesh Sinha respond to that.
Let me give you two examples.
Let Rakesh Sinha respond to that. That Narendra Modi is himself responsible for the selective outrage that he accuses human rights activists of. Rakesh Sinha, that it is the government of the day which perhaps resorts to selective outrage, and therefore the Prime Minister's words do not echo. Respond.
Rajdeep, I know that you are an activist for a long time, and that's why I am pointing out certain things which you would understand. Unlike other people
I'm a citizen,
who are new journalists, but you have a background of activism.
No, I'm not an activist, sir. My tragedy is that I'm a citizen journalist. But go ahead.
No. I know. Why you are afraid that when I call you activist?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. I just saw the Nobel Peace Prize winner saying that journalists should be activists. So no problem. Please say what you want. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, sure. Let's start. I should congratulate Prime Minister for bringing out certain things which have been suppressed for a long time. Instead of that, academicians should have started debate on human rights, because human rights is a very important thing. It is a very small thing that whether a human rights activist are blaming Lakhimpur and not blaming Rajasthan. I am coming to more important topic, which for that I am congratulating the Prime Minister. I am taking the name of 3 organizations: Andhra Pradesh Civil Liberties Committee, Association for the Protection of Democratic Rights, CPDR, the third committee is the Committee for the Protection of Democratic Rights. These 3 bodies look like that they are the democratic rights bodies. But they had been and they have been and they are if they were dominated by Naxal activities. They protected Naxal activities. In fact, the Naxalites, masquerading as the human rights activity, they have abused the entire concept of the human rights. Here lies that why APCL PUDR, which Kavita Krishna was taking the name of, Andhra PUCL, People's Union for Civil Liberties and Democratic Rights, split in 1981. The 76 it was formed by Jayaprakash Nayak because it was the pro-Naxal elements which wanted to interpret human rights in its own way. That's why Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji says that coloring of the human rights, ideological color to the human rights damages the entire concept, reduces it to a political stooges of certain political parties. When you are going certain states,
but you would agree, Rakesh Sinha ji, you would agree that groups like PUDR have spoken out against both 1984 and 2002. Let's be fair. There are civil liberty, human rights groups that have spoken out. Just a minute, Kavita Krishna. No, just a minute, ma'am. That have spoken out against both.
Let me complete.
No, just a minute, Kavita Krishna.
Out that every listener will understand what I want to say. The concept of human rights and civil liberties are very important for democracy. I consider they are the sixth pillar of democracy after the media. But why the entire human rights organizations are reduced to the pro-Naxal bodies, and now they are the pro-Congress, pro-anti-BJP bodies? Because they are acting just like the shadow opposition parties. If they are acting impartially, if they are acting objectively, and they are asserting, I would love to have a human rights body in a country, because human rights violation can take place anytime with anybody. But when a human rights bodies become the mask of the Naxals, they become the mask of the political parties, naturally the concept is reduced to the zero level. Okay. And that's happened. Why there is a decline of PUDR, which was formed by Govind Mukhoti? Why K. Gopalan was a Naxal activity, that he dominated the APCLC in Andhra Pradesh? CPDR was pro-Naxalite in Maharashtra, and Association for Protection of Democratic Rights was pro-Naxalites.
Okay, so Rakesh ji, you are making a serious point which Kavita should respond. You made a serious charge that many of the human rights activists, according to you, just a minute, sir, they are acting as a mask for the opposition or Naxalites. Kavita Krishna now respond. One by one, you made the point now, Rakesh ji.
But please mute him.
Let her respond. You made a serious charge.
I can't speak through the static. Please let me respond. First, I would request all the viewers here to
mute me. How can you mute me? I have to complete my sentence that these are the pro-Naxal activities.
Please mute him while I'm speaking. Don't scream. I can't speak through
Rakesh, let her complete. You have made a charge against her. She should be allowed the time to respond. You are suggesting that they are a cover for Naxalites. Respond, Kavita.
Now, I want to say that I would request all the viewers here to please go to the website of the PUDR, which I mentioned, and the PUCL, which I mentioned. And you will find several statements which are there against the Maoist party as well, and other such similar factions, which are saying that they have violated the rights by killing non-combatants. Okay, so you will see that. As for my party, you will see your statements even against the killing of so-called combatants, because they have been killed in at a time when they were not actually attacking or anything like that. Okay, so the point is that this is something which just doesn't stick. It's a factual wrong thing to say. But interestingly, what Rakesh Sinha is saying is actually validating what I was saying, which is that the government of the day, the Prime Minister, is attacking human rights groups by with the old stale argument that human rights groups are basically because they are speaking up for the rights of people whose lives are taken away under the pretext that they are Naxals or whatever it is, or whose freedom is taken away. They are being accused themselves of being extremists and so on. This is not a new thing. This is what all states have always done when they attack human rights groups.
No, the charge now is that you are, the charge is that the Prime Minister made is that they have got so heavily politicized. Just a minute. That they have got so heavily caught in party politics.
Yes,
that the
please,
concept of
please,
universal human rights is being lost?
Please, may I? You see, but that is what I'm saying, that has to be backed by some specific fact, right? So in the absence of that, he's saying they are defending the rights of so-called Naxals. Now, defending the rights of Adivasis in conflict areas, that is being conflated by the government of the day and their MPs as being with the Naxals and so on and so forth. But I want to ask a question of my own, Rajdeep, to Mr. Sinha. I'm going to quote two statements, one by the Prime Minister, one by the Home Minister of the country. Please tell me if that is not a textbook definition of a violation of human rights, of universal human rights, of each human being has equal value, okay, where the rule of law should apply equally to all.
What is your question?
One is when Narendra Modi has said repeatedly that Hindus can by definition never be terrorists, which means that he is defining the act of defining terrorism not by the act, whether you're blowing somebody up, whether you're killing somebody in a certain, whether you're committing a mass massacre, whatever it is, but by the identity of the perpetrator and, of course, the victim. This is what Narendra Modi is doing. In my definition, in the UN's definition, classic human rights violation. Second is a statement by the Home Minister of the country, who defines an entire category of human beings as termites. He did this in his speech in Assam. Are
What's
these
your
not
question,
human rights
ma'am?
violations? Imagine if this were a Congress leader who had done it, would you or would you not say these are human rights violations? If we were to refer to all Hindus as termites, if we were to, if a Congress leader were to say all Hindus are termites, would you say this is a human rights violation? If a
Ma'am, now
I
think Rakesh should respond now.
Muslims can by definition never be terrorists.
Ma'am, let Rakesh respond. You made your point, he should respond. Rakesh Sinha, respond. The fact is, the Indian state's track record across the world at the moment on human rights is poor. It's abysmal. Many states do not even have a proper state's human rights commission in place at the moment.
Rajdeep, I am facing two anchors here, one Kavita Krishnan, other Rajdeep Sardesai. Two panelists here, one Rajdeep Sardesai and Kavita Krishnan. Let me respond what I want to speak, because you are discussing the statement. You are discussing the statement of the Prime Minister. You are not discussing the statement of some state leader.
Sure.
Just let me say that why Prime Minister said that in 1981. PUCL, then dominated by certain radical elements, has published a report on Kashmir. The report, before getting released in India, it was used by Pakistan in the United Nations. For the first time in the history of human rights, the PUCL has formed a committee under B.G. Varghese, some committee outside the army. Some civilian was engaged for that committee. B.G. Varghese was a great human rights activist. Everybody will accept his role in Indian civil liberties movement. And he had given clean sheet to the PUCL. This kind of activism of the human rights organization in the name of the facade of the human rights. They are using the facade of the human rights to defame India outside the country, to strengthen India's enemies' hands in the United Nations. These are all empirical
what is this
facts.
defame, sir? With due apologies, what is the why defame? Are you telling me human rights activists have no right to question the government? How does it become defamation? I am not saying the
human rights activists are not. What Prime Minister said? What Prime Minister has said? Prime Minister said that when you are doing partial activities, when you become a party of any activities, you have right. I said that Prime Minister says remain objective. If government is facing criticism, you are criticizing, here Prime Minister is not commenting upon you. Every anchor has right, every human rights activist has right. But when I have counted 4 organizations, I have many organizations in my hands, all these organizations were formed by the pro-Naxal groups, and Kavita Krishnan couldn't reply. They were not dominated.
Why would you ban, for example, an Amnesty International? Why would the government, just a minute, Kavita Krishnan, why would the government of India withdraw funding? Why would the government of India ensure that the Amnesty International cannot function in India anymore? It's globally recognized.
Yes, I'm telling you. Government of India during Manmohan Singh regime, its office was abolished from India. Later on, India government has not permitted, because the Amnesty International, I'm just quoting one report of Amnesty International. You go the latest report of Amnesty International, I think it was published 5 years ago, on Kashmir, without any footnote, without any empirical evidence. It was accusing Indian government, Indian constitution, Indian rulers that the violation of human rights and unfounded allegations. A 60 years old woman was raped, the known name of the woman. Who raped? Who are the witness? Nothing like that. If it becomes the propaganda machinery, and Amnesty International itself is a...
So you're saying human rights organizations have lost their way and have become propaganda machines.
One of the Secretary General of Bangladesh,
Rajdeep,
they are misusing money, they are misusing the platform, they are the worst organization, they are the CIA agent. Amnesty International is a stooge of the CIA.
May I please respond to this? Rajdeep, really? I mean, that one instance he gave, I really want to respond to this, is because it refers to sexual violence. Hello? May I respond?
Yes.
I want to remind Mr. Sinha that no report is allowed to name rape victims with their identity and so on and so forth, because the law prevents us from doing so. It's an Indian law. He should at least know about that. This is about protecting the human rights of rape victims. Okay, so he doesn't seem to even know that basic thing.
No, Rajdeep, don't allow her to do a propaganda of Amnesty International. Amnesty International's report, you can get the report on the website. That report was without any empirical facts. Without any empirical facts, whatever
the argument being made. Okay, Rakesh Sinha, the argument which you are making is that human rights activists, ma'am, according to him, with the rise of the BJP, have turned more ideological and less empirical.
Propaganda using India's flag.
Can I respond?
Yes, very quickly, ma'am. 30 seconds.
I would like to say that I myself, he is speaking to me. There's a left government in Kerala. I have my own party, and activists like I have raised human rights violations repeatedly in Kerala, including killings by the ruling party of activists, including Maoists being so-called Maoists. Exactly what we are accusing the BJP of doing or Congress of doing in other states. We have accused the left party of doing and the ruling left party of doing in Kerala, which is killing people with in fake encounters and then later justifying it by calling them Maoists. So we are doing it irrespective of who is in power. But the question I asked about selective outrage and selective definitions of terrorism, I have not got a reply to, and you aren't pushing him. You please push him for an answer. The question I asked is that if the Prime Minister says Hindus can by definition never be terrorists, that an act of terror committed by a bomb blast, committed by a Hindu can, by definition, a Sadhvi can never ever be. It's a crime to even imply that, to even file an FIR against her saying she is accused of terrorism.
No, I don't.
This is what Narendra
I
Modi
don't
has
think
said.
that the second part is what the Prime Minister said.
Selective?
We must be also very careful in what he said. Let's be very careful and exact in what is said, because quoting and attributing quotes of this nature should be very clear. The fact is, the second part, that a bomb blast which was done cannot have been done by a Hindu is not true. He did not say that. Let me be very clear about that. He said the first part of what you said.
By definition never be terrorists. He said it. He said, has a Hindu ever been terrorist? He asked. And I'm asking, has Godse not been a terrorist? He asked in a gathering, and I'm quoting exactly that.
Rajdeep, give me time to answer.
I unfortunately have the limitations of time, but you have made a... No,
Don't allow India Today TV to be propaganda platform.
No. Kavita Krishnan, mic off. 30 seconds, Rakesh Sinha.
India Today television for the propaganda against the Prime Minister.
Rakesh Sinha, you answer her question.
The way she is condemning the Prime Minister. No, I am answering the question. You don't allow her to make a propaganda, false propaganda against the Prime Minister of India Today television channel.
Sir, I have told her.
Prime Minister has said, he defined Hindus, ekam satyam vipra vadanti, that Prime Minister says. There is a one tooth and learned people interpret differently. We believe in diversities. We believe in human rights. That's why the Parsis were given shelter in India. Nobody abused Parsis. There were 1,31,000 Parsis in 1931. No Hindu asked them to convert. No Hindu accused them. No Hindu coerced them. And the Chairman Mosque, which Prime Minister presented to the Arabia King ruler, that temple was converted into mosque by the Hindu ruler just for the sake of the Muslims. If the Prime Minister is giving interpretation to the beautiful Indian culture, that is a Hindu culture, what's wrong?
Okay.
You want to degrade the Hindus?
Okay, let's leave it there. Let's leave it there, Rakesh Sinha. The idea was to give both of you equal time. Unfortunately, as a result, we've run completely over on what is an extremely sensitive subject. Hopefully, we'll have more on that a little later today. But I appreciate both of you joining us. Thanks very much for watching. I'm afraid we don't have enough time even for our normal image of the day. For now, stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri, Namaskar, Jai Hind.